I didn't realize how exhausted I'd become until the morning I sat in my car outside the diner, hands gripping the steering wheel, debating whether I even wanted to walk in. The place used to feel like a second home, bright, greasy, predictable. But lately, just thinking about another shift made my stomach twist. And somehow, it all tied back to one person, Marcy. I'd been working there for 3 years, mostly morning shifts. I liked the routine. Regulars knew my name, I knew their orders, and the tips were steady enough that I didn't complain. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Then Marcy got promoted to shift lead, and everything started to tilt in ways I didn't immediately see. At first, she acted friendly. Overly friendly, actually. She'd lean against the counter while I prepped tables, offering helpful advice masked as compliments. "You're doing great, babe," she'd say, tapping my shoulder. "Just pace yourself. You rush too much. It stresses everyone out." I didn't rush. I just worked. But I shrugged it off. Then she started correcting me in front of customers, even when nothing was wrong. A guy would ask for extra napkins, and before I could grab them, she'd swoop in. "Don't worry," she'd tell him, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I'll take care of it. Some of our staff are still learning." I wasn't still learning. I'd trained half the people on that floor. I tried to brush it off. People have weird management styles, whatever. But the real shift happened slowly, like someone turning down the lights, one click at a time. Every week, Marcy would adjust the schedule. I'd lose a morning shift, then another. Then I was suddenly working nights, which were slower and tipped worse. When I asked why, she smiled like she was talking to a confused kid. "Oh, sweetie, you said mornings were wearing you out. I'm helping you. You're welcome." I had never said that, not even close. Little things kept piling up. She'd tell the cooks I messed up orders I never touched. She'd forget to log my breaks, so it looked like I was slacking. She started telling the new hires to run everything by her first, because our girl here gets overwhelmed easily. I'd be standing right there when she said it. Every time I tried to call her out, she'd act hurt. "Wow, I was just trying to support you. I thought we were friends." She'd lower her voice, just enough for others to overhear, making me look like the aggressive one. I began doubting myself. Was I imagining it? Overreacting? Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was too sensitive. But every week, my hours shrank, my tips shrank, my patience shrank. Meanwhile, Marcy floated around like she owned the building, smiling at customers, slipping out early, taking credit for everything. The moment things truly clicked for me came one slow Tuesday night. A regular named Mrs. Patterson waved me over and whispered, "Honey, that woman told me you've been struggling, but every time I come in, you're the only one working." The way she said it, gently, confused, flipped a switch in my chest. Struggling. That was the word Marcy had planted in everyone's head. I went home that night and sat on my bed replaying months of small digs, accidents, and fake concern. None of it felt random anymore. It felt intentional, targeted, like she'd been nudging me toward a corner while smiling the whole way. By midnight, one clear thought settled in my mind, steady and calm. I'm done letting her shape the story. Once that realization settled in, everything Marcy did felt different. Sharper, clearer. Like I was finally seeing the strings she'd been pulling the whole time. And once you notice the strings, you can't unsee them. 2 days later, she called a quick team meeting, which was really just her gathering everyone near the soda machine while pretending to check the syrup levels. She launched into this speech about communication issues, but the way she kept glancing at me told the whole story. "We've had some inconsistencies in order accuracy," she said, holding a stack of papers dramatically. "Nothing serious, of course, just things we should be aware of. Growing pains." Then she smiled at me like we shared some private joke. I felt heads turn. That smile made me feel small on purpose. After the meeting, one of the newer servers, a shy girl named Tessa, pulled me aside. "Did you really mix up 8 tables last night?" she asked, eyes wide. She genuinely didn't know whom to believe. "I didn't mess up any table," I said. "None." Tessa nodded slowly, like she wanted to trust me, but had been hearing too much of the opposite. And it hit me harder than Marcy's theatrics. She wasn't just making my job harder, she was rewriting who I was to everyone around me. The final straw came a week later. I went to check my next schedule and saw I'd been given only 2 shifts, both closing shifts, both the worst nights of the week. My hours had never been that low, not even when I first started. I found Marcy leaning against the hostess stand, scrolling through her phone. "Why did you cut my shifts again?" I asked, calm but firm. She didn't even look up. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic." Then she finally met my eyes and smiled with this slow, pitying twist of her lips. "I'm trying to give the newer staff some room to grow. You get overwhelmed. I'm doing you a favor." Overwhelmed. Again with that word. "I never said that," I replied. She shrugged. "Well, that's not what everyone else thinks." My chest tightened. "Everyone else thinks what you tell them." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Annoyance, maybe. Or the fact that I wasn't playing along anymore. "Look," she said, voice dropping, "if you're unhappy, maybe this isn't the right place for you." There it was. The push. The quiet shove toward the door so she could look like the reasonable one when I finally snapped. But I didn't snap. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't say anything that could be twisted later. I just stood there, studying her like a puzzle I was finally learning how to solve. I walked away with my schedule slip in my pocket, but my mind wasn't on the lost hours. It was on every moment she'd twisted, everything she'd planted, every little manipulation she'd gotten away with, because she counted on me staying quiet. She thought she had me cornered, but cornered people pay attention. They notice things, patterns, habits, weak spots. I went home that night and sat at my kitchen table until the streetlights came on, replaying her behavior from the very beginning. And that's when I realized something important. Marcy wasn't smart. She was sloppy. She'd gotten too comfortable, too confident in the story she'd built around me. And if she wanted to play stories, fine, I'd give her one. Only this time, I'd be the one writing it. Once I stopped reacting emotionally and started paying attention, things fell into place faster than I expected. Marcy had a rhythm. She lied with confidence, manipulated with charm, and covered her tracks just enough to look innocent to anyone who wasn't paying attention. But she also had a weakness. She needed people to believe she was in control. And people who need control tend to leave fingerprints everywhere. I started small, quiet, invisible. I kept a little notebook in my apron pocket and wrote down every time she corrected an order I never touched, every shift she changed after the schedule was posted, every time she spoke for me to a customer. Nothing dramatic, just dates, times, and what was said. I made sure to do it casually, in the open, like it was just part of my routine. She never even glanced at it. Then I started asking polite, simple questions. If she claimed I mixed up a ticket, I'd ask to see the ticket. If she said she logged a break for me, I'd ask to check the system to make sure my hours were correct. Always friendly, always calm, always in earshot of someone else. It threw her off. She'd blink, hesitate, get flustered for just a second before covering it with a smile. But those tiny cracks were what I needed. Because every time she slipped, someone else saw it. And every time I asked a question, she had to give an answer she couldn't keep consistent. Meanwhile, I collected actual evidence. Photos of the schedule before she changed it. Photos after. A few short voice memos on my phone when she made comments about me struggling in front of customers. Nothing illegal, nothing invasive. Just proof of what she said publicly. But the real turning point came from something she did on her own. One night, near closing, she went on a rant to the kitchen staff about how managing people who can't keep up is exhausting. I walked into the break area at the tail end of it, and she didn't notice me right away. But Julio, the most senior cook we had, did. He looked at me, then at her, then back at me with this expression that said everything. He didn't buy it. That's when the idea solidified. The diner's owner, Mr. Kendall, only visited a couple times a month, but he trusted Julio more than anyone on staff. And Mr. Kendall wasn't the type to ignore real problems, especially ones involving shifts, schedules, or customer complaints. The key wasn't to confront him directly, it was to make sure he saw the pattern himself. So when he came in the following Tuesday, walking through the kitchen to check the inventory, I happened to be nearby. Marcy was mid-lecture with Tessa about presenting yourself as reliable. It was classic Marcy. Patronizing tone, soft voice, the whole performance. Tessa looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. I stepped in, calm and casual. "Hey Tessa, didn't you handle 8 tables by yourself last night? You did great." A simple sentence. Friendly. Supportive. But Marcy froze, because it contradicted the narrative she'd been feeding everyone, including Mr. Kendall, apparently. He turned toward us and raised an eyebrow. 8 tables? He asked. Tessa nodded. And she did really well, I added. Did everything on time. The moment hung just long enough for Marcy to panic. She plastered on a smile and said, "Well, yes, but we're still working on her consistency." "Actually," Tessa said softly, "you told me yesterday I'd been improving a lot." Julio was standing behind Kendall. He nodded once, slow. And that was it. The smallest shift. The kind that seems meaningless at first. But manipulators rely on silence. And suddenly, silence wasn't on her side anymore. Over the next week, I just let things happen. I didn't push. I didn't confront her. I didn't fight her narrative. I simply stopped playing along, and I let the evidence, the patterns, and her own contradictions breathe. And once people start noticing things on their own, the story changes by itself. The unraveling didn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It was small at first. Quiet exchanges, sidelong glances, a shift in how people responded to her tone. Marcy kept trying to steer things back to the script she'd written, but the room didn't move with her anymore. And the more she pushed, the more obvious it became. One Friday night, the diner was packed. Families, regulars, the whole place humming. I was juggling 5 tables when I noticed Marcy hovering behind me, arms folded. She stepped forward right as I handed menus to a couple. "Let me take over, honey. You look frazzled." Frazzled. Another one of her favorite words. I didn't react. I just stepped aside and let her talk. The couple seemed confused. I'd literally just greeted them. But before Marcy could launch into her performance, Mr. Kendall emerged from the kitchen, holding a clipboard. "Marcy," he called, "I need you in the back." She flinched. Just slightly, but enough. When she disappeared, I apologized to the couple, took their drink order, and carried on. But I could feel the tension brewing behind the swinging doors. Later, Julio brushed past me and murmured, "He's checking schedules." I didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't even let myself hope. People like Marcy have a way of slipping out of consequences. But there was something different this time. Mr. Kendall wasn't speaking in half-whispers or taking her explanations at face value. He was asking questions, real ones. When he finally came back out, he didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. The kind of disappointment that's heavier than yelling. Marcy trailed behind him, arms crossed tightly, mouth pressed into a thin line. She didn't say a word for the rest of the night. The following Tuesday, the new schedule went up. I checked it out of habit and froze. My morning shifts were back, full hours, even an extra weekend shift I hadn't asked for. And under that, in small printed text, shift lead responsibilities temporarily reassigned. See management. I didn't know whether to laugh or breathe. I went to the break room for my pre-shift coffee, and that's when Mr. Kendall stepped inside. He closed the door gently, like he didn't want to startle me. "I reviewed the last couple months of schedules," he said. "A lot of changes weren't documented properly." I nodded, staying quiet. "And I talked to the staff. Everyone, actually." His expression softened. "I should have noticed sooner. I'm sorry." Hearing that, from him, landed deeper than I expected. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "That's why this is serious. When someone tries to make a good worker look bad, it hurts the whole place." He paused, then added, "We'll figure out next steps. In the meantime, keep doing what you've been doing." The relief didn't hit all at once. It spread slowly, like warmth returning to numb fingers. I didn't need Marcy fired. I didn't need some dramatic punishment. I just wanted my own name back. Over the next week, the diner felt lighter. Customers smiled more. The staff relaxed. And Marcy, well, she stopped floating around like she owned the place. She kept to herself, quieter, measured. She still smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes anymore. For once, she was the one being observed. A few days later, Tessa approached me during cleanup. "I'm really glad you stayed," she said. "I didn't know what to believe before, but now I do." That meant more than she knew. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand takedown. It was truth. Slow, patient, undeniable. All I did was stop letting her control the story. And once her version fell apart, the real one filled the space naturally. I don't hate her. Honestly, I don't even think about her much anymore. Manipulators thrive when you respond, when you bend, when you doubt yourself. The second you stop playing along, they shrink. Life at the diner isn't perfect. It's still sticky floors and clattering plates and the smell of burnt toast before sunrise. But it feels like mine again. And the quiet morale I walked away with, the one I didn't fully understand until everything settled, is this. Some people build their power by dimming others. But once you protect your own light, even a little, they can't control the room anymore. Not then, not ever again.